And we look really at this pattern of when you're up, how do you discharge and come back to the middle? When you're down, how do you recharge and come back to the middle? Right? And then all kinds of somatic tools that really, because we are bio-spiritual beings, we're physiological, neurophysiological beings. So movement, that's one of the reasons movement and mindfulness are such healthy companions, because they get us in that biological way. They meet us there.
In this interview with Rebecca Strong, we continue our talk about EMDR intensives and Rebecca's retreat style intensives. Rebecca has a strong background in somatic therapy, and she integrates a lot of somatic work into her EMDR intensive retreat. She will explain how we can help our clients to widen the window of tolerance and do a little demo of how she integrates breath work with her somatic interventions. Rebecca will explain the importance of how to integrate movement into EMDR and how to create safety with physical intensity. Here's the interview with Rebecca Strong. Rebecca Strong, welcome back to the Art and Science of EMDR, and thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Rotem. Great to be here.
So, Rebecca, I want to continue our conversation about EMDR intensives and EMDR retreat, and I want to ask, first of all, who can benefit from EMDR intensives?
Yeah, it's a great question. People who have a lot on their plate. So people who serve people, right? So I work with a lot of C-level managers, business owners, people who work in schools, sometimes straight up, parents who aren't necessarily serving a big role in the community, but are serving a big role at home. So, and the state of their mental well-being is going to impact the people around them, right? So it's kind of like we have this 1 hour a week model, or 1 hour every couple of weeks. Or the next level is like, if someone's in an extreme situation, then there's like inpatient, right? There's inpatient or outpatient models. The EMDR intensive retreat is for someone who's in acute physical pain that's psychologically prompted, or someone who had a recent loss and it's taking over their thinking, their sleep. Maybe they're carrying an intense amount of physical pain in their body, but they go and kind of get a stress test and realize it's actually not physically, it's not a physical symptom, it's psychological or emotional. Someone who has, who's type A, a lot of their world is depending on them. And they're just not functioning well. Maybe they're not thinking clearly, or again, their sleep is interrupted. Typically it comes from, having a loss or multiple losses, or big transitions, and that it would make sense for them to hit the pause button on their life and actually slow down, stop, and have support at looking at, okay, what is going on? What triggered this? And with EMDR, it's, as you know, such a great modality to work with, because I feel like I'm partnering with nature. Like that person's nervous system wants to bounce back, wants to recover, wants to get back on its A game. But there's something that's preventing that. So they can kind of half drag themselves forward through life for the next 6 months or year. So many people put it off. They're like, oh, it'll get better, or it'll go away, or, and, it's like, as we kind of keep putting off the healing, we're not in our full capacity, and the world around us suffers, and we suffer. And the thing about it is that it's unnecessary suffering. Like I had a client who had a major loss last winter and was brave enough to come in for a 3-day intensive. And it took a lot of the physical distress from the situation out of, just doing the bilateral work, doing some yoga, and having that therapeutic attention changed the game. Like his family was like, oh my God, thank you. We have our person back. That person could have chosen to never do it or to put it off for a year or 2 years. And just imagine all of the accumulated stress on all the levels that he would have had to kind of keep suffering or limping along with. And the fact that he had the courage to say, okay, I'm even telling my office manager to not book me on these days. Like, we're getting everyone involved in this pause. And he walked out of here a different person and had, slowed down, decompressed, integrated this intense experience in his life. And he's walking forward with way more of himself. And there's a capacity to rebound in the human that's profound, but we have to kind of take time out to access it.
Yeah, Rebecca, I like what you said about the nervous system tends to bounce back. Can you talk a little bit about the nervous system and how do you perceive these intensives through the lens of the nervous system, and how do you perceive, treatment in general, EMDR therapy, through the lens of the nervous system?
Sure. Well, I have my handy dandy window of tolerance right over here. You can hardly see it, but I think studying the window of tolerance, right? This one has little boats. So it shows the window of tolerance. It shows hyperactivation. It shows hypoactivation. I know Deb Dana also has the autonomic ladder, right? So we've got the neuroception of safety, danger, and life threat. So really taking the stigma out of mental health issues. Like, we all have a nervous system, and most people who drive cars, don't necessarily open the hood before they get in the car. They just depend on that wiring to function well, turn the little blinker on and it activates the light in the back. It's like, it's similar with us. We don't think about it because we don't see it, but the nervous system is a central part to who we are. So, and what we know is, like, happiness and perceptions of safety, there are patterns to what creates that for people. And then there are specific, sort of in general ways, and then there are specific things that help each of us individually. And understanding mental health through the lens of, like, am I activated or overstimulated, or am I understimulated or underwhelmed? Like, am I going sympathetic or am I going more dorsal? And what are the things that keep me in the middle? And help widen that window of tolerance. Like, and I always think coping skill is how we kind of start out. We start out with creating coping skills that help us stay in that middle ground. That turns into a life skill, and over time it turns into a lifestyle, right? Where we can roll with life's punches more fully, and we know for ourselves, oh, I'm starting to go hyperactivated. I'm starting to move towards panic. What can I do as a self-intervention to come back? Deep breath, feel my feet, scrunch my shoulders up, relax them down. Okay, I'm a little more able to be present here. All of that's really important. That's sort of subtle. It can be very subtle and it can be very gross, but I think it's central to living a good life. And I think it's central to know as a clinician and to teach our clients. So it teaches them how to fish.
Absolutely. I
I agree that, a lot of times when people are out of the window of tolerance, they tend to think about themselves as something is wrong with me,
Mm,
or I'm crazy. So when people dissociate, a lot of times they feel crazy. They feel
mm,
like they're, something is wrong with them. Or when people are, above the window of tolerance, when they're in, hyper sympathetic arousal state, they feel also like overstimulated, and then they start thinking there's something wrong with them. So
mm,
um, I like that approach a lot, because when every person, when we're in the window of tolerance, we're kind of in our zone, right?
yeah.
So I guess my next question is, how do we do that? How do we widen the window of tolerance, or how do we um, keep ourselves and our clients in the window of tolerance?
Hmm. So, it's a kind of a personal journey, right? I think learning what takes us up, learning what brings us down, and also studying the times that we've been in the window of tolerance, whether it was a moment or a vacation, a 2 week, period of time, or has there ever been a time in your life when you sort of lived inside of a healthy window of tolerance without a lot of up up and down, and really looking at what was that, what were the elements that brought you there, that kept you there, that keeps you there, and then creating lifestyle and habits around that. Healthy habits are huge, right? Every successful person, so many successful people I know blame their success on their habits, right? And when I think of habits, I think window of tolerance. It's like, oh, what keeps you in your optimal zone? Do you have to move before you have coffee? So you for sure do that keystone habit and start the day feeling energized and balanced. Um, and if you drink the coffee first, are you more like less likely to do your movement practice? For some people, that's true. So finding that first thing right out of the gate in the morning that sets you off in a good way, and developing allegiance to that and awareness, mindfulness, all of those things, super helpful.
Yeah, and I know you shared before that you have a systematic way that you have a training that you teach both clinicians and clients, the Mind Body EMDR toolkit. Can you say a few words about that?
Sure. So I introduced people to the window of tolerance through this map. This map was created by a group, a social worker at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. And she basically took Dan Siegel and Pat Ogden's window of tolerance and then put little boats on it. So I give people that map, and then I have them identify, what are the things that take you up? What are your unhealthy coping skills? Once you're more activated, what are your unhealthy coping skills? What are your healthy coping skills? And then what are the things that take you down? What are the things that keep you in the middle? We do a tour of the vagus nerve. I call it Las Vegas. We do
Mm,
a tour of Las Vegas. And we look really at this pattern of when you're up, how do you discharge and come back to the middle? When you're down, how do you recharge and come back to the middle? Right? And then all kinds of somatic tools that really, because we are bio-spiritual beings, we're physiological, neurophysiological beings. So so movement, that's one of the reasons movement and mindfulness are such healthy companions, because they 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 get us in that biological way. They meet us there.
yeah. Um, can you talk about specific practices that you use, or coping skills that you teach people? So I know a lot of people, and I know you live in Boulder, Colorado, so a lot of people probably have their own outdoor practices. I know that in Boulder, that's how people get in the zone, or a lot of people do. But I'm curious about specific things that you can teach people with, whether if it's a yoga pose, or a movement, or anything kind of physical that helps to widen the window of tolerance or help keep people in the window of tolerance?
Sure. So for people who carry a lot of stress in their body, you know, some people carry more stress in their mind. Some people carry more stress in their body. I find some people it's kind of balanced. So if someone's more somatically inclined, you know, one really great tool is this one. So this is, you inhale, your shoulders come up towards your ears, you're squeezing your biceps, you're making fists, and you're taking the stress that's already there and you're amplifying it. So it's a little gestalt like in that way, right? So you're amplifying the stress and you're squeezing, 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 and then you're exhaling and melting. Right? Even just doing one. So I do repetitions of 3 of most practices. So again, maybe you get more of the muscles of the body, maybe the quads, you know, and the hamstrings, and then it's a really melt, 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 right? And get the jaw released, and then one more time. Right. So even that starts to be a little more self-study of like, wow, I can actually do something that impacts how I feel, and it's immediate, it's tangible, right? So, and I'm taking the stress, amplifying it, and then finding its opposite. So that's one I teach a lot. The other one is like hugging the redwood tree. So it's sort of like a standing cat cow where you open. This is really good for someone with grief, because it's so lung, chest, heart, constrict, ouch, dorsal, right, response. So you're getting that dorsal vagal response, and you're inviting its opposite. So you're standing, your knees are buoyant and toes forward, and you're imagining you're hugging a giant mama redwood tree with the breath. And then as you exhale, you're tucking your chin, you're tucking your tail, and you're bringing these 2 middle fingers to touch. So again, it's a mindfulness of the body. This always creates more presence, right? And then there's something really nourishing about deliberately going a little more dorsal, right? It's this titration, and then you're up and open again, and then titrating back. So those are 2 practices that I teach more for sort of physical alleviation of stress, distress, discomfort. And then if someone's mind is super, super fast, I find that breath work is one of the gentlest, kindest ways to kind of invite that scattered dissipation to land, to come home. So alternate nostril breath, uber, like super helpful and kind of immediate, right? So that one. And then another one I really love is the 3 by 3 by 3, but you're inhaling, holding, exhaling, but the goal is to get to 20 seconds. So you're taking 1 breath per minute, which they say, actually, it's said that the Buddha was taking 1 breath per minute. And this is intense. I actually did this before my national counselor's exam. This was my practice for studying my mind and working with the anticipation, the anticipatory stress, right? Of sitting for the exam, of being under the time pressure, of getting everything right. So starting with 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, and then building that inner muscle and that inner capacity until you literally have your phone or your watch and you're 20 seconds, go moving, stretching. It's a practice to get there, at least I found. And then getting curious, which part of that breath is the most difficult? For some people who struggle a little more with depression, the inhale is going to be the harder thing to expand. For people who struggle, who go a little more hyper on the chart, are going to struggle with lengthening that exhale. So that also is data, right? So those are some of the practices that I incorporate to widen that window.
Yeah, and these are things that you teach in your training, the mind body EMDR
Yes,
toolkit.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you said that people who have their mind works fast, you teach them breath work. And I wanted to ask if it doesn't lead to more rumination. So um, when people generally, it has been my experience with some clients that when people have a lot of in here and they try to focus on the breath instead of distracting themselves with text messages or Instagram or whatever, um, they they find that they have more thoughts. And it's not that they have more thoughts, it's just that they're all of a sudden they're aware of their thoughts. So do you find that sometimes that people have even more rumination when they're trying to do breath work?
Um, if I'm working with a client that you're describing, I'm actually going to do something like a wall squat where they're having physical intensity as well as deep breath work at the same time. So part of I think understanding the nervous system and incorporating movement is in helping kind of land the dissipating nature of the mind, right? We want to land the dissipation and start to focus. One of the quickest ways to do that I find is to match the intensity, right? So if someone's got a lot of intensity, a lot of rapid movement, then I'm going to have that. I'm like, some clients, they'll come in, I'm like, go to the wall. We have a good rapport. I wouldn't do that the first session, but it's like, oh God, they're like, oh God, I'm in that state, huh? I can just tell. So, right, again, it's like amplify that in order to help them start to find a little more wiggle room around it so that they start to find its counterpart, and you'll literally see their window of tolerance start to widen. And I'm a person who has a lot of like I'm a muscle person. I'm a body person, and I like physical intensity. So I tend to be a person who likes to offer that. So and I'm a yoga teacher, so I trust being able to set people up with alignment so they're not getting hurt. And of course, you're checking in with them, making sure that they're safe. But you're wall squatting, and you're having them open on the inhale. They're pressing their spine and the back of the head against the door or the wall. Their thighs are burning. And then as you exhale, they're squeezing and they're just pressing it all into the wall. And you can even have them like identify an emotion that they're pressing in. You can do a suds before the wall, right? And it's again 3 to 5 breaths. And then the second one would be 5 to 8 breaths. And then the third one, 8 to 10 breaths with a break in between. Again, they're learning titration. So they're going into intensity, but then they're coming out, and you're teaching them how to come out of that intensity. So I've got them, again, a wall squat against the door, and they've done their first rep, and it was 5 breaths. And then they walk put their hands on the wall to walk up, swing the arms, have them look around, do some visual grounding. Okay, 3 things in the room that are red, 2 things that are green, 1 thing that's flat. So they're going more than expansive, kind of opening their perception, creating a little more room inside, lightening up the intensity, and then boom, back to the wall, this time for a little bit more, right? And really be there, really give that wall, give it your all, right? And I'll have them stay until I can tell that intensity meets the level of intensity inside, so that they can start to then have a little more room to breathe. So 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, in between, we're expanding, we're getting them to visually orient, we're kind of making it, loose, lightened it up a little bit, have them breathe, taking the suds level, And then on the other side, it's like, what do you notice? Whoa, I'm a lot more, what do you notice? Whoa, way more here for sure. They're also feeling safer, right? It's also teaching them the neuroception of safety, because when we're in states of stress, we don't feel safe, right? There's like, we're not feeling safe inside of our own skin, or safe in the world, or safe in a certain conversation. So there's something about grounding, all of the grounding presence through the body, where you're just thinking about where your feet are and surviving that squat. It creates safety, because we know what we're talking about right now. And it's right, it's straightforward, and we're in a space where we can be met in that intensity, and also invited into feeling a little more present, a little more safe, have a little more options. As soon as we go a little more further toward the window of tolerance, the thing that opens up is our awareness of choice, which creates safety, right? And so even if it's like, people start saying, oh my God, I've never noticed that hanging on your wall before until now, or, oh, were the birds chirping before? When we're stressed and in fight or flight, we lose that peripheral awareness. And that's a sign that they're feeling that they're coming home, right? Is when that
They
awareness
start noticing. Yeah. And it sounds like people leave your office calmer and also in better shape with all these squats on the wall.
That's funny. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, psychological gym. I mean, when it's just the intention, right? The plank is also really good for that. It's super good for anger. It's also good for lethargy.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're hyper or hypo, it's going to take you closer to the middle, right?
Yeah. Okay, Rebecca Strong, thank you again so much for coming on the show.
You're so welcome. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for doing this and for offering this to our community, Rotem. I really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. I enjoy doing it. Thank you, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.